Welcome to Chris's Storytelling Corner. My name is Christopher Muldong, and I am an author. Today I will read pages 1 to 4 of my horror short story, Shattered Glass. Here's the synopsis. Shunned by her classmates and peers, Crystal Sharder lives a lonely and miserable life. Retreating to her room when her father beats her mother, a man appears as if he is stuck to her wall named Glasgow. He shows her a world different from her own and tells her that she can be a part of it. However, she must first complete various tasks before she can enter this new world, including killing her parents. I am warning you right now that this story is not for children. There is graphic violence in this story, and I would classify it under like a gothic horror suspense story. Like I said, not for children. Next week, I will read and conclude Shattered Glass by reading pages 5 through 9. You can check out my author's website at www.chrismuldong.com. If you have an e-reader, you can buy my works on Amazon.com or a PDF copy on my website, starting with my first novel, a fantasy adventure called The Mustard Prince in the Condiment Kingdom, for $4.99. Also for $1.99, you can buy my short stories and short story collection, starting with the gothic horror short story, The Land of the Wooden Statues. Then there's the horror collection, which is a compilation of 3 of my gothic horror short stories, which includes this story, Shattered Glass. And the Fantasy Fable collection, which is a compilation of 4 of my Fantasy Fable short stories. Check out my Twitter page and author's Facebook page. Links to all these will be provided on the description. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel if you're on YouTube, or follow this channel on SoundCloud or PodBean. Let's get started. Looking at her own reflection on an antique vanity mirror, Crystal Sharder says to the person on the other side, "Hello, you're looking good today. I hope that someone nice will talk to you." With a forced smile, she walks downstairs on the rotting wood floor, only to step on a small piece of glass from a broken vase. Crystal's father, as usual, came home drunk last night and had an argument with Crystal's mom, Rose. She could hear her dad's belligerence and her mother's pleading from her room upstairs. From under her covers in the darkness, she hears a stern yet gentle voice telling her, "Don't be afraid and see me right here." She slowly uncovers the sheets from her head and sees an old, decrepit man attached to the wall. The only visible parts of his body are his chest, head, and arms. The top of his head and his left eye disappear into the wall, and so does most of his left arm. "Who are you?" Crystal asked, frightened. "My name is Glasgow, and I am not from this world. I have seen your hardship, and you have been chosen to walk among us." Crystal's mouth is agape, unable to say anything. "I see that you are surprised. Go back to sleep and listen to the messages that you hear tomorrow." Crystal wakes up to the sound of her cell phone alarm. Knocking over a bottle of pills, reaching for it, she looks at the time and forces herself out of bed to shower and get dressed. Going downstairs to eat, she sees the back of her mom as she prepares cereal for her daughter. When she turns around, a shiny black orb shows itself on her mother's left eye. Unable not to stare at it, her mom says while trying to be cheerful, "Oh, this? Well, you know how your father can be." Trying to act as if nothing happened, Rose's hands shake uncontrollably as she serves the cereal to her daughter. Noticing that Crystal is staring at the black eye, she hurriedly walks to the downstairs master bedroom and shuts the door behind her. "Your poor mother. Isn't there anything that you can do to release her from her misery?" a strange voice says inside of Crystal's head. "What do you want from me?" Crystal asks out loud, addressing the voice. She suddenly hears sobbing from across the hall in the master bedroom. Realizing that she spoke out loud, Crystal looks around and hurriedly finishes her cereal. She puts her dishes and utensils in the sink and quickly leaves. Walking on the sidewalk beside a small forest of trees that sit between her house and the next closest residence, Crystal talks to herself as she heads to school. As she gets closer to the other kids walking along, they can hear her mumbling to herself and keep their distance. Just ignore them, a voice inside her head says. Who said that? She looks around and sees a girl walking by. Was it you? The girl runs away, and Crystal looks around frantically. They can't hear me. Only you can because you have been chosen. Okay, so what do I have to do? Crystal says aloud as she gets many tense glares. Just observe your surroundings. You will find the faces that will guide you. In her homeroom, Crystal sits next to a window that looks out to the front of the school. She occasionally sees cars passing by, students making faces at her. However, the mundane scenery in front of her vanishes as she sees nothing but darkness through the glass. From a distance, someone walks toward the window. Making out the face, she sees herself with long black hair instead of her long, frazzled blonde hair. Her blue eyes stare at the dark brown eyes of her apparent doppelganger. She reaches her arm out to Crystal as the darkness vanishes and light comes in. Behind her are trees with thick green leaves, fresh grass, flowers, and clovers dispersed throughout the ground. Walking forward with her arms reached out, she stops. You didn't grab my hand in time, Crystal's own voice says in her head. A hail of glass rains down from the sky and leaves a sharp yet blinding impression upon all that it touches. It cuts through the branches of the trees and strips them of their bark. They wither and shrink until the rest of the hail evaporates them. Small cuts form along her doppelganger. Still reaching out to Crystal with her left arm, its skin gets torn off with fresh red blood pouring onto the once green grass. Her face receives cuts, and the pieces of pointed glass stick to the remains of her face. Streams of red blood flow down her face until a larger piece of glass enters through the top of her head and through her right eyeball. The scene before her vanishes into blackness, and the face of what looks like a dog's face photographed in the dark imposes itself upon the window. With only a part of its face visible and its right eye completely black, it tells her, This is what will become of you and the world on the other side, unless you reach out to her. Crystal! Crystal! Pay attention! A familiar voice says to her as she looks at the window, almost hypnotized. She turns her head and sees her teacher looking at her with a stern look and her hands on her hips. Did you hear what I said, Crystal? You are so helpless, her exasperated teacher says. Laughs and snickers from her peers drown the classroom as Crystal looks down and slumps into her chair. Her embarrassment fades and turns to worry as she calls what was just told to her by the strange face on the window. After school, groups of friends walk home together, and parents pick up their children with seeming delight. Crystal solitarily walks home but cannot forget what she saw. As she walks by the houses in her neighborhood, she sees a man's face imposed on a window with his eyes scratched out. Why don't you head into the forest where you used to play? Says an unfamiliar man's voice inside of Crystal's head. At 7 years old, Crystal's father came home inebriated. He saw his daughter playing with dolls, and he said to her with disgust, These dolls aren't your friends! Why don't you have any friends? Why does my daughter have to be such a loner? He quickly walked up to her and ripped the dolls from her hands. Pulling their arms, legs, and heads apart, Crystal looked at her decapitated friends on the floor and ran outside into the small forest next to her home. With tears in her eyes, she reached the edge of the trees looking down a high cliff with only a wooden railing preventing anyone from falling to their death. Ever since then, every time her father was angry at her or hit her, she would go to the cliff and sit alone. Right before sundown, with the canopy covering any remaining light, Crystal walks past the trees and avoids tripping over roots. Taking the same path to the cliff that she has always taken, she remembers climbing trees hoping never to be found. When she had run away into the forest in the past, her father would usually be asleep on the floor while her mother would look for her. She reaches the cliff that looks down onto a busy road. The thought of jumping has crossed her mind, especially after getting beaten by her father. Even though she has been on top of this cliff many times, today felt particularly different for Crystal. This is where the bridge to our land will form. It will appear in time, the voice of Glasgow says in her head. I want to go there now, though. Why can't I? She says in distress. That's all for today. If you like this, subscribe to this channel if you are on YouTube, or follow this channel if you are on SoundCloud or PodBean. Thank you for listening to this reading. Next week, I will read Shattered Glass, pages 5 through 9. Also, check out my manga reviews for Negima, volumes 13 through 16, and next week, volumes 17 through 20. Thank you, and until next time.